everybody. Welcome to another episode of Purple Insider. Matthew Coller here. And folks, we got about 15 days left until the Minnesota Vikings take the football field for training camp. And I can't wait. So, what we're going to do tonight is continue our countdown of the most interesting Minnesota Vikings at training camp. And I've got my list. I've been counting down from 25. So I should probably start by telling you who was on the list if you haven't been following. Well, also if you haven't been following, come on. Like, let's go, right? But if you haven't, I guess I can forgive you and tell you who is on the list so far to start us off. And then tonight we have numbers 10 through 6 counting down. And on Thursday night, it will be the top 5 most interesting Minnesota Vikings at training camp. And you'll never guess who's at the top of the list, but the rest of them, maybe you haven't figured out just yet. So let me run through the list to this point, and then we can go from number 10 to number 6. Ask questions, leave comments. This is a wide open space for you guys to talk football with me as always. So jump in the comments and we'll have a really good discussion. Also, Maggie Robinson is back and she's got some things to look at later on in the evening as well. So I'll just count you down from 25 to 11, and then we can go in depth through the top 10 because there are podcasts on each one of these. So the starting with 25 was Jay Ward, 24 Zemiah Vaughn, Silas Bolden 23, Bo Richter 22, and Gavin Bartholomew 21. From 20 to 16 was Jalen Naylor, Gabriel Murphy, Will Reichard, Max Brosmer, and Dwight McGlothern. Going to have a story on Max Brosmer, by the way, over at purpleinsider.football. Might be a good time to sign up, everybody. From 15 to 11 was Jeff Okudah, Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins, Sam Howell, Theo Jackson, and Jordan Mason, which brings us to number 10. Dusty, the intro, I believe, was done on my Yamaha Pacifica for the intro. It does have a chimey sound to it that can be a little Telecastery, though. That's a good question. You guys like your guitar questions from time to time. So let's get to it. Number 10 on the list is defensive tackle Levi Drake Rodriguez. Last year, Levi Drake Rodriguez was one of those training camp darling type of players. He had everything. He has a cool name. He's got long hair. He's got great athleticism. He is a 7th round draft pick out of Texas A&M Commerce. So the intrigue of a college no one's ever heard of before. And there was a little bit of a vibe when they were talking about him. And look, I understand why people do this, of the John Randall, right? A small college in Texas. Nobody's ever heard of him. He's underrated. He, I think, was a baseball player and then decided to go full-time football. And he had all these crazy background things that he did to get to be an NFL prospect. Kalen Kaler of ESPN wrote the big piece on him as Prospect X. And there was a story in there, two different stories in there that were pretty wild. One of them was that he would sleep on the field so he could be the first one out there to practice before everybody else got to the facility. So it would be 5 o'clock in the morning and the coaches would show up and Levi Drake Rodriguez would be already out there having got a workout in at 4 in the morning. So, first one in the facility, why not never leave and sleep on the football field? So that was one of them. And then there was something else about how he would put snacks in his uniform because he was trying to put on more weight. So he'd have like a sandwich in his pants or something. I mean, there were all these kind of, hey, Levi Drake Rodriguez, Chuck Norris kind of style stories. And last year he had a good training camp. He got some work with the first team when Jerry Tillery was out, showed some power, showed some strength, some raw ability, but raw ability is what it really was for Levi Drake Rodriguez. And during the regular season, he only got a handful of snaps against the Seattle Seahawks. One game he gets tossed in there and he looked pretty good in his handful of snaps. He had, I think, a run stop, may have batted a pass down or tipped a pass, something like that, but didn't get a lot of action. And the Vikings last year had a defensive line with a lot of veterans, with Jerry Tillery, with Jonathan Bullard, and you could see why Levi Drake Rodriguez wouldn't see a lot of action overall, but they did have space for it. And I think it just tells you that because Jalen Redmond emerged from a guy who was in the XFL into the NFL and got a lot of playing time right away. So if they had felt like Levi Drake Rodriguez was ready to go, then he would have been in the game. But clearly they thought that he needed more development. Now, Brian Flores, during mini camp when he spoke, did talk highly about the development of LDR and about how he thought he was already seeing a big jump in him, because it is actually a more complicated position than you think on the interior of the defensive line. Things happen super fast. If you're not hitting the right shoulder, if you're not getting off at the right time and using the right hand placement and footwork and all those details for every single play, then things go wrong around you, whether it's the edge rushers or whether it's blitzers or whatever else. And it does also take time. And Kwesi Adofo-Mensah has called pass rushing the dark arts and talked about how it just takes time for guys to learn how to really be a pass rusher. So Levi has now had an entire offseason to learn, to develop, to grow. And there's also, I think, a spot to be earned in a rotation along this defensive line, because when you look at Jonathan Allen, when you look at Javon Hargrave, I mean, those guys have a lot of experience on their bodies. And what I think the Vikings would really like to do is rotate those guys in and out and not have them play 800 or 900 snaps. They would much rather have them play 650 and have Harrison Phillips play 650, and everybody's kind of coming in and coming out so they could be fresh all the time on the D line, because over the last couple of years, we've certainly seen the defensive line get worn down. Now, what I'm curious about with Levi Drake Rodriguez is where he lines up on the defensive line, like who he's emulating, because each guy, each backup, they have a general idea for who they're supposed to be like. So, for example, Theo Jackson was trying to emulate last year Josh Metellus. So if Metellus got hurt, Theo Jackson knew his job. Now, sometimes, hey, you're going to have to go be the deep safety instead, but that's how they usually try to set it up. Like if this guy goes out, then this guy can do what he does. So is Levi Drake Rodriguez more of a Harrison Phillips who's using his power and his leverage and his strength to move blockers, or is he more of a Jonathan Allen? I mean, I don't think he could be a Javon Hargrave because he's not undersized. He's big. I think he's about 300 pounds, if not a little bit more. But can he be a Jonathan Allen who's more of a all-around player who gets in the backfield and uses his quickness and his quick twitch, get off, all those football words? But Jonathan Allen is one of the best when it comes to that. Is Levi Drake Rodriguez more of a pass rushing type defensive tackle or more of a run stuffing, body moving type of defensive tackle? Because we don't really know. I mean, he's kind of a ball of clay when he arrived here. So we'll see. And that's one of the things that makes him so interesting in training camp year 2. And with any of these players that are late round draft picks, undrafted free agents, this is the time they got to do it now. Like there isn't a, hey, over 5 years, we'll develop you and see how this works out. Like the next man is always coming up. And if Levi doesn't take that big step, then it's kind of on to the next guy. You know, Tyrion Ingram Dawkins is the next most interesting player, right? So this is I mean, you can't really call it make or break, but it kind of is. It's like, is there something there or not? When you've had a full off season to develop, you've had a full season to work with this coaching staff. We're going to find out, I think, pretty quickly on him. Number 9 on the list is Mekhi Blackman, cornerback. Last year, first day of training camp, it was really brutal. Tears his ACL, and everybody was already really down at training camp last year to start based on what had happened to Kyrie Jackson. And it was already a somber beginning to camp. And then Mekhi tore his ACL, and it was really crushing for a lot of people who had been impressed by him in the way that he played in 2023 and also the way he had prepared to be the starter in 2024. They came into camp feeling really good about how he had played in OTAs and in mini camp. And he's also a mature guy. I mean, he's 26 years old. They only drafted him 2 years ago, but he played a lot of college football. and he was ready to play when he came out and played over 400 snaps, did well, was a really good tackler, aggressive player. And honestly, if he hadn't been mossed on that touchdown by Cortland Sutton, his grades and his data would have been even better for 2023. Like overall, outside of that memorable play that lost them the game in Denver, Blackman had a good run as a cornerback in 23 and is ready to start now or ready to play a significant amount of time. The question for Mekhi Blackman is, I don't think it's whether you come back from the ACL, and Flores mentioned being very impressed by his recovery and how he was ready to go and he was doing everything that he was supposed to do in minicamp. I think it's really, what does it look like with him and Isaiah Rodgers and Byron Murphy? Like, is there a desire to get more nickel personnel on the field at the same time? Because Gilmore last year and Shaq Griffin didn't always play on the field at the same time. In fact, they kind of didn't often, where it might just be two corners and they would mix in Shaq Griffin, and then occasionally Byron Murphy would go into the nickel, but it was not their main base set to have those guys on the field at the same time. Often you'd see Josh Metellus lining up in the slot or at the nickel corner sometimes. So will they want a more, hey, Mekhi Blackman and Isaiah Rodgers are the outside corners and Byron Murphy is the inside corner, and you're doing something a little different with Josh Metellus? There's some versatility potential there, but Blackman has to play well in this training camp. And there also could be like, who's going to get more snaps in the season? Will it be Isaiah Rodgers or will it be Mekhi Blackman? He was not the most crazy, freakish athletic guy coming out of the draft. It wasn't like he was 20 years old and he was a raw ball of clay, but he is somebody that has great instincts for the football and has an aggressive mindset and is a real fit for who Brian Flores is. So Mekhi Blackman, a lot of pressure on him now to become the guy that they were looking for when they drafted him, to bounce back from the ACL and to also prove that there was no reason to have all these conversations about Jair Alexander or about Jalen Ramsey, that the Vikings, he can show that they do have depth at the cornerback position, because right now it's just a lot of unproven. But if he has a really good training camp, they walk into the season feeling good about him, then we're going to look at it more like maybe they've got something here in Blackman, in Rodgers, and of course we know what Byron Murphy brings to the table. So he is number 9. Number 8 is Josh Metellus for two different reasons. As of this moment, 7/7/2025, Josh Metellus does not have a new contract. And if we arrive at training camp and there is not the old school, because they haven't done it in recent years, but it used to be a tradition where we would arrive at training camp and somebody would be getting a contract extension. It was Everson Griffin one year, Linval Joseph another year. We haven't seen it so much during the Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, Kevin O'Connell era, but maybe we could with Josh Metellus. They've had all this time to negotiate, but if they don't have a contract settled, then what? How much does he practice? Is it a hold-in situation like we saw from Danielle Hunter for a couple of days before they got something worked out with him? Was that 2023? I think, yeah, 2023 in training camp, where there was the hold-in situation with Danielle Hunter, or there was the mysterious ear ache / back injury that suddenly was okay for TJ Hawkinson once he got his contract extension worked out. Then well, my back feels nice and loose today, and no more ear issues, just in time for the season and to play on my new contract. Is it going to be something like that? In minicamp, Josh Metellus participated in all the walkthrough elements. So it was like a half hold in. It wasn't like he was only coming to meetings and then not doing anything. He was out there doing the walkthrough parts, but he was not doing the full team 7-on-7. And I think that this contract negotiation will be a little bit tricky with Josh Metellus because it's hard to find comparables. And from the Vikings perspective, they could say to Metellus, and probably be right, this is the place where you're going to be the best version of yourself. And are you going to be the same Josh Metellus if you were to hit the open market? Or do other teams think that you're going to be a $15 or $20 million player somewhere in that range if you're playing for another team. And I think Josh Metellus could come back with, and his side, I think it's Drew Rosenhaus, and his side could say, whoa, thousands of snaps, captain, interceptions, fumble recoveries, fumbles caused, high grades as a run defender, multiple positions, the most multiple player in the league. So there's those two sides, I think, can make reasonable arguments against each other. Can they get to a middle ground to the point where they find a contract extension? For all the other players on this team, they have, but will it take a lot of training camp, or will it just be resolved quickly? And then that's part one to why Josh Metellus is on the list. Part two is, where's Josh Metellus playing this time? Is Josh Metellus playing deep safety next to Harrison Smith? I think we've all just assumed that was going to be Theo Jackson, but doesn't have to be. Is he sometimes in the box, sometimes playing deep? Is he less of a linebacker this year and more of a true safety? Like, what's his position this year going to be? We will be watching that on a day-to-day basis, because this whole secondary is really new from what it was last year. And there's a realistic possibility that they've been just, or they'll be just as good or even upgraded to some extent. But there's questions to be answered about how all the puzzle pieces are going to actually fit in. So Josh Metellus, number 8 on the list. Number 7 is rookie Ty Felton, wide receiver from Maryland. Massive production in college, great speed, impressive NFL combine, comes out with a lot of excitement. But what's the opportunity for Ty Felton? Is he going to be a returner in a year where the NFL has said, we want kick returns? Does that benefit Ty Felton to get the football in his hands? He's never really been a returner before in college, but he's got the speed. He's got the playmaking ability. He's even got some size to him. So maybe a kick and punt returner, or one of the two. And then, is he looking like a more refined young receiver that could step right in if there's an injury, or could even force some snaps and force his way on the field? Or is he looking like somebody for 2026? I think in minicamp, he looked like somebody for 2026. You could see the raw speed. You could see some of the ball tracking ability when they would throw downfield to him, but you didn't see the refinement of the route running and of some of the details. So is that going to matter, or are they going to carve out a role for him right away? We are going to start to see that as training camp develops. And the really interesting moment for Ty Felton will be when the pads come on. How does he perform when guys start getting up in his face and using their strength and their power against him? That will determine maybe how often we see him during the regular season. And number 6 is Christian Darrisaw, left tackle for the Vikings, one of the best players in the National Football League, and they need him back. They need him for as many football games as they can get him for, but you don't want to rush. You don't want to try to force Christian Darrisaw on the field, because it's a long 17-game season and they expect to be competing throughout. So if you rush him at the beginning of the year, does that set him back? I thought, just going back, the first one that comes to my head was in 2018 with Dalvin Cook, where they pushed him back onto the field after a hamstring injury. He was coming off the ACL, and then it just turned into a bit of a lost season for Dalvin Cook in 2018. You do not want a lost season from your superstar left tackle that you just gave a major contract for. So they want to play it safe. They want to be patient. But here's a little bit of the problem. When you look at the beginning of the schedule, those are your winnable games. Chicago, Atlanta. Okay, Cincinnati's good, but you're home against Cincinnati. And then you look at the middle of the schedule. Whoa, that's where all the tough teams are. That's where the Lions, the Rams, the Chargers, the Eagles. The Chargers are the Thursday night one. I mean, that's where some of your toughest teams are going to be. Out to Los Angeles on a short rest after playing, I think, Philadelphia at home. I mean, whoa, that's tough. You need Christian Darrisaw at 100%. You don't need him in some games, out of some games. You want his recovery to be good to go all the snaps the rest of the way. So it might take some patience, but how much? Like, how much are we going to see Christian Darrisaw do? Will he be back taking first team reps before the end of training camp? Or if not, then where do we feel like he stands to start the season? So that the importance of that makes him the sixth most interesting Viking at training camp. So just to recap, Levi Drake Rodriguez at 10, Mekhi Blackman at 9, Josh Metellus at 8, Ty Felton at 7, and Christian Darrisaw at 6. So, questions, comments, anything is on the table for you guys when it comes to the Minnesota Vikings and NFL. What do you want to talk about tonight, the rest of the way? If you got thoughts on the most interesting Vikings at training camp, if you guys want to guess some of the top 5, those will be coming out on Thursday night. Go ahead, and anything else is on the table. So let's see what you have to say. Daniel said, I think of Levi Drake Rodriguez caught the attentions of coaches at SAGU when he had a two-handed dunk of a basketball while wearing cowboy boots. Is that true? I mean, honestly, if you told me any Levi Drake Rodriguez story and you said it was true, then I would probably believe you. That sounds made up, but it might be true. Actually, I think what happened was they had come across him somewhere. One of their scouts, I wrote a story about this, but I can't remember the exact story. It was one of their scouts had come across him, and then they wanted to confirm it at the Hula Bowl or some sort of bowl game Tropical Bowl, Tropicana Bowl. And I had never heard of that bowl game before. And then he just blew everybody out of the water in that bowl game. So the Vikings, that caught their attention. They started to do their background and so forth. And then he got drafted in the 7th round. But one of the things that's always a little bit tough about guys like this is they're so easy for fans to fall in love with that you get to know the name, you get to know the background story. Already the guy's got some lore behind him. He's a 7th round pick. So we also have to be realistic about what this could be. Could it be just something we remember like, oh yeah, that guy was there for a year or two? Or is it another great story where someone becomes a significant player? I think this is the year we start to find out. Dusty with a great reference here. Hopefully that's not a Treadwell stairs thing. Talking about sleeping on the field. Yeah, I will never forget Mike Zimmer at the NFL Combine saying about Laquan Treadwell that he needs to stop running the stairs and start working on his skills. And I think he said that maybe in a press conference too, because he was running the stairs at training camp in 2017. And if I'm not mistaken, Joe Schmidt was doing his TV hit down there. And it was like, yeah, behind me, Laquan Treadwell is the only guy out on the field and it's late at night and he's running the stairs or whatever. And it was never Laquan being in shape that was the problem. It was the route running. And he never really got that, although I'm sure he's still on a team somewhere. Corey says, is it a Flores thing, or why don't we use a true nose tackle like Taki Taimani instead of using Harrison Phillips? Well, Harrison Phillips is a way better football player, so that is part of it. Somebody who's proven over years that he can be really, really good on the interior. Taki Taimani just barely made the team. So, there's not just the size issue, but also the technical parts of it are enormous, of being in the right spot, readjusting. He's the leader of that D line. So he's adjusting where the line is, communicating, all that sort of stuff. So Phillips is even if he's not as large weight wise, he's much more qualified to handle offensive linemen, and he's super, super strong. So strength is going to be a little more important than just actual weight. And the way that I understand it, and this was explained to me by Harrison Phillips, is that Brian Flores is not really looking for his defensive tackles to just be fat and shove themselves into a couple human beings, and which has been effective in the past from some of our favorite players ever, like Ted Washington or Pat Williams for the Vikings. But I think what he's looking for is this game where they're moving guys left and right, where the linebackers are set to attack certain gaps. And what the defensive lineman's job, especially in the middle, Harrison Phillips, is to get the center turned one way or another, or bring the center with him as he jumps over to another gap right after the snap, stuff like that, and then open up space for the linebackers. So it's not really just run into a bunch of people and stuff the gap like that. It's more of move it to the left or the right, manipulating what the offensive line is trying to do. And then you're bringing a linebacker to the party. So if you notice, like all the Vikings linebackers and Josh Metellus, they grade well by PFF in run stuffing. But a lot of that is because they're not having to often run directly into guards who are getting to the second level because those guards are being moved by Harrison Phillips or Jonathan Bullard. How they do that this year will be interesting. But I know we think of that 4-3, I'm sorry, the 3-4 defense. I know we think of that as like one giant man in the middle, two defensive ends. The giant man in the middle takes on three people and just pushes them back with his stomach. I don't think that that's how this system works with Brian Flores. So maybe we will see some Taki Taimani because of that. But, I don't know if that's really a role in this defense. I think quickness is going to have to be part of it. Strength and technique are valued a little bit more than just like large. Let's see. Let's see. Carl Edwards. Okay, I was trying to read. Is Carl Edwards a NASCAR driver? Who is that? Carl someone. Maybe it is. Why is there no hype on Mekhi Blackmon anymore? I mean, was there ever like a lot of hype on Mekhi Blackmon? He's a third-round draft pick. And when he came out, there was some criticism of the draft pick because he didn't match up with the consensus board, which I kind of thought was as a consensus board user, I thought was a little silly once we get into like the third round, because teams are usually picking players they feel like fit for their systems and culture at that point. And it's not like reaching in the first round, but Blackmon, I never really came in with a lot of pomp and circumstance. He was a productive player at USC, but it wasn't like he was one of the USC players that got talked about a ton. And he worked his way into the lineup in the 2023 season, but that was a season that was a little bit lost, especially at the end where he played well, but the defense didn't play all that well and kind of fell apart toward the end of the season. So I've felt like with the ACL and all that, and then when he actually got his playing time in 2023, that when this defensive back unit is talked about outside of us, it's often, and maybe this is what you mean, is it's often like, oh, they got nothing there. They know nobody proven. There's just nothing to even talk about. And Blackmon gets left out of that conversation is just because he does have a small sample size of performance. And it came at a time where no one was really paying a lot of attention to the Vikings because Kirk Cousins had already gotten injured and they were playing Nick Mullins and they're, in some tight games, but it's Denver, Cincinnati, the Lions where Mullins throws the interception. Like these are the types of games that he was playing in that, it's the Jaron Hall game. They just weren't the types of games that were getting a lot of attention for what the Vikings defense was doing. So to the outside world, Mekhi Blackmon is a complete unknown. I don't think of him that way. I think he's like a half known for us. We know somewhat about him, what he can do in a half a season, but we don't know everything about Mekhi Blackmon just yet. Rob says the Vikings went to a lot of trouble to keep LDR safe on the roster last season. They lost Nick Muse and Jamin Davis on waivers. I mean, Jamin Davis is not he was barely a part of the team to get them to the practice squad instead of LDR. Are you sure they lost Jamin Davis? I thought he showed up in the middle of the season. Or do you mean between like the end of last year and the beginning of this year? I don't even know if that guy is like in the NFL right now. They did lose Nick Muse, though. That's true. No, they kept him. Details aside, they kept Levi on the roster. They didn't cut him last year. So he did play well enough in training camp to earn a spot. I think that always, I'll say this, the idea of guys getting poached is so overrated and teams are way too afraid of it. I don't know that was like why, if they were afraid of him getting poached. I think that he had a good training camp and that's why they wanted to keep him on the roster. Maybe they were annoyed at losing Nick Muse, but I think you're always going to pick a younger defensive tackle who you're just starting to develop over a tight end 3 that's pretty replaceable in the draft or undrafted free agency. It's clear that the guy has upside because when you look at just his raw talent, his quickness, his strength especially stands out. What he was able to do in that bowl game that I couldn't remember the name of, But also, even when he played in Texas A&M Commerce, it's not the greatest competition, but he pretty much mauled the entire competition with everybody, I'm sure, trying to block the heck out of him. So he's got a lot of talent. Is he the next John Randall? No, probably not. But is he somebody that could be a useful part of a rotation in the best case scenario? I think the answer is yes. So clearly they liked him enough to keep him around for that. Otherwise, they would have cut him right out of training camp last year. Bra Me says every time or every team needs some reliable JAGs. You mean just a guy, hoping he can morph into one. See, when I think of just a guy, I don't think of them as being reliable. I think of just a guy as someone who I'm looking to replace all the time or that I wouldn't want to have actually play. I think of it as you have your superstars, you have your quality starters, and then you have your reliable backups, and then you're just the guys. And the just the guys are ones in my definition book are guys that you don't want on the field pretty much ever, if not for maybe a handful of snaps. So I think I would read that as you need some of these just the guys currently to be reliable backups or rotational players. That right now, Levi Drake Rodriguez is just a guy. And if he takes a step forward, he could be more than that. And I think you need some of them somewhere on this roster, like even Dwight McGlothern. Everybody was high on him, but until proven otherwise, just a guy. Even Theo Jackson, like he's made a few plays in the league, but still just a guy. You need him to be more than that. You need him to be a starter. You need McGlothern to be a quality backup. Like there has to be some development here because this team has not hit on a million draft picks. So what they're banking on is finding some of these guys and turning them into reliable players. And then they've got their stars that they've built through free agency. Andrew says, on behalf of the Lions, Packers, and Bears, we all want to thank you for letting Sam Darnold go and taking a chance on JJ. Yeah, Andrew, were you the guy that predicted the big season for Sam Darnold last year? I think you were. And you nailed it. You nailed it, my friend. You crushed it. You were absolutely right. You were saying 30 touchdowns for Sam Darnold, that he was going to win a bunch of games. And I mean, you were dead on about Sam Darnold. However, here's the thing about saying that the Lions, Packers, and Bears are thrilled about them moving on from Sam Darnold. Well, the Lions probably aren't too terrified after what happened in week 18. Are they thrilled about facing Jonathan Allen? Are they thrilled about facing a much better Vikings offensive line? That's what I would ask. I mean, JJ McCarthy being better than what Sam Darnold was last year is a high bar. It's going to be difficult to do to be a top 10 quarterback, to have the type of high moments that he had against Atlanta, 5 touchdowns, Seattle, game-winning throw to Jefferson. The game against Green Bay is one of the best quarterback games that I've covered since I started covering the team by a Minnesota Vikings quarterback. That's one that, they'll be playing on NFL Network for years to come, right? That every time Sam Darnold's name comes up. So I don't think anybody would degrade what you're saying about Sam Darnold having a great season last year or being a good quarterback. I think that he is, and he proved that he is. But they are facing now a much stronger roster overall for the Minnesota Vikings. If we were to go through, like, let's say we were doing like a Madden thing where they grade, 1 to 100, and we've talked about this, how they kind of overrate some of those things. But if they were doing a 1 to 100 grade on every position, and you got the little bar, how is it all the way full? Is it halfway full? I mean, how many of the Vikings position grades now after their upgrades, if we turned injuries off, how many of those would be a 90 or higher? The offensive line, the defensive line, the front 7, the running back, you could make an argument for it. The wide receivers, absolutely yes. I mean, they took this offseason and they went to every single area of weakness and they stacked it. Will Fries, Ryan Kelly, they poured money into it. Javon Hargrave, Jonathan Allen poured money into it. They kept Byron Murphy Jr. They kept Aaron Jones. They did not keep the former Braves outfielder, but they did keep this great running back. That's a lot of money that I'm not sure how you spend that if Sam Darnold had continued to be the quarterback. I think they could have done some of it And I think they would have still been competitive. And I would have said, because I was the only person saying that I was okay if they figured out a way to bring back Darnold and made McCarthy wait another year. So they could have done some of it. But the counterpoint to what you're saying is the supporting cast got better, not worse. And this is a supporting cast that just elevated a guy who had been one of the worst quarterbacks since 2018 to being one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. So if they even do something remotely similar with elevating JJ McCarthy, then you're talking about a really, really good football team. So I don't know that there's celebrations around the NFC North when Sam Darnold left, because they are allowed to look on ESPN depth chart and see the rest of the players, I think. So Rob says Rodgers and Okudah might have the inside running for the outside spots when Murphy shifts inside. Okudah is not above Mekhi Blackman on the depth chart to start this out. It's definitely Mekhi Blackman. Mekhi Blackman is somebody they really like. They really like. Jeff Okudah is a, hey, maybe there's something there guy. And that's fine because there's no downside to taking shots like that at former first round draft picks. But we're talking in Mekhi Blackman of somebody that they identified and they got in the game in 2023 and they really, really like what he looked like. And then they loved the way that he attacked his rehab, and he's out there with the first team during minicamp, and it's going to stay that way, I think. Rotating in with Isaiah Rodgers, but I think it's going to stay that way with Blackman. If Okudah ends up being anything, any sort of rotational element for them, that's a huge win. If he's anything. And he was out there sometimes when Josh Metellus wasn't there or if Blackman wasn't doing everything. But right now, the depth chart is pretty clear. It's Isaiah Rodgers, Byron Murphy, and Mekhi Blackman. And then we'll see if McGlothern or if Okudah becomes something that they can trust. But when you look at Okudah's past, I mean, there's just really not a lot of evidence that he's somebody you want on the field much. Dusty says, I do not want us to extend Metellus just so we can't go old regime and hand his agent a blank check. So here's the thing about that, Dusty, is that the difference between the two regimes is JJ McCarthy. If you were paying Josh Metellus huge dollars when Kirk Cousins was taking up 30 million, or at the time that was a lot, 15 to 20% of the cap every year, because he was always on a short, fully or largely guaranteed deal, it would be problematic. I mean, that Anthony Barr contract was problematic because they just couldn't afford to do anything else to that team. So you keep a star, but gosh, that's a couple players that you would be able to add, or you have to bend and twist to get Barr's contract under the cap for 1 year, but then you can't get it for the next year the same way. So you got to let somebody else go, etc. But it all drew back to that quarterback situation. I know you can't pay everyone, and they kind of have. Darrisaw, Jefferson, those are huge deals. And then Jonathan Allen and Byron Murphy, those aren't cheap. Those are $20 million a year. But even then, think about the gap between even Jordan Love, who's early in his contract. I think he's a $29 million hit. It's 25 more than JJ McCarthy, man. I mean, with Josh Metellus, if it's 15, if it's 18, the way you can spread the thing out, it'll be through most, if not all, of JJ McCarthy's rookie contract. You can make these things work. There does come a point where, yeah, I mean, next free agency, you're not going to be able to go spend on 18 different guys like they did this year. I think our free agency special next year, I'm already preparing myself for it to be not as exciting as it was this year, where it seemed like every 5 minutes they were making some big move. They're not going to have the cap space to do that, but they can sign Josh Metellus to an extension. I think it's just really figuring out what kind of extension you're talking about with him. Is it something under what Byron Murphy got? Is it more? Is it similar to Javon Holland? Was he around 20 million, I think, with the New York Giants? Or is it Trayvon Moehrig, who was around, 16 or 17? Or do they look at it and say, this type of player, we can find that player in free agency? But that would be pretty hard to argue, right? Because there's so few of him and every team would want one. That's what makes it a little bit tricky. But I'm much more okay these days with signing the blank check to somebody because you have the cap space to be able to do it. And if you look at just these current contracts, there is a lot, and I mean a lot of space for call it adjustment. You could also call it manipulation, but adjustment is a fine word to use as well. For you can restructure O'Neal, you can restructure Grenard, you can restructure Hawkinson. You can like that's a lot of what's going to happen into the future because it's win now time. So that's what you do. You start messing with the cap. And then, eventually you'll have to deal with that, but you're in your winning window for now. Me says Felton feels like a guy who's going to get 15 receptions, just doesn't seem like a guy who's going to have a year one role. Yeah, I agree with you. And that's okay. That is completely okay if Ty Felton is allowed to develop. It's what I said about Dallas Turner. Once upon a time, we had kind of declared KJ Osborne is not anybody to pay attention to. And then, whoa, he's got, 50 catches or something the next season because sometimes it just takes a little bit to develop. And I think he's going to be someone that really does need to work on the details of route running specifically. When I saw him in minicamp, that was my main takeaway. I don't mean he's bad at it. I think that when you watch the guys who are very refined, there's a difference, and that's natural. But he's got the athletic ability to do it. And I think he's got the drive to do it from everything that I've heard about Ty Felton. It's going to take some time because he doesn't have a whole lot of actual gameplay. Let me get back to your questions in just a second, but this show does have at least one sponsor for this week, and that is IDOU. As you guys know, over the last couple of years, I've built Purple Insider into my own little small business here, but I realize as a business owner that I still have a lot to learn. That is where IDOU comes in. I am learning to jumpstart this here company's growth through IDOU courses and how to be a little more innovative using their award-winning methods to help me lead Purple Insider into this changing media landscape. One of the things that's a bit overwhelming for somebody like myself is AI. It's kind of scary, right? IDOU has an entire suite of AI and design thinking programs that are helping me understand and learn how to combine AI tools with human-centered design to boost creativity and solve problems. If you've seen any of those little clips on YouTube, that's a little AI program helping me out with that. So a lot of things that IDOU can help with their courses as well. Classes start soon, so enroll today. For a limited time, IDOU is offering my listeners 15% off site-wide. Go to IDEOU.com/Purple Insider. That is IDEOU.com/Purple Insider. All right, back to your comments. This one made me laugh from Brahmi. Darrisaw is so unheralded that half the national media mispronounce his name. I think this is going to stop happening if the Vikings win a lot more, or if the Vikings are not the cute little Vikings team. They got some guys, I guess, which was what they were last year. Jonathan Grenard was in the top 5 in quarterback pressures last year and is still getting called Greenard. Blows my mind. This is like Danielle Hunter. Nope. Danielle Hunter. I mean, come on, man. Danielle Hunter is one of the best players in the league, and people are still calling him Danielle. I mean, I don't even know what they're saying about Christian Darrisaw. Is it Darrisaw that they're saying instead of Darrisaw? Because there's really no H there. I don't know how they're mispronouncing it, but this does tend to happen a lot, and maybe relevancy will come along with Jonathan Grenard and not Greenard. That to me just is you haven't seen him play. He must be a stat sheet number to you because he's always making plays and the broadcast is always talking about him. So you had to have caught his name somewhere, right? That one there is no excuse for now. It happens. There's a lot of NFL players. It does happen, but there's really no excuse for when you're talking about one of the best left tackles in football or one of the best edge rushers. I mean, okay, so there was the one time that Steve Levy tried to say Afadi Adenabo, and that went very wrong, but I get it. That happens. The guy's a 7th rounder who had just, started to crack the starting lineup. Mistakes happen. But a guy who's been one of the best left tackles in the league over the last 5 years, yeah, you should get that right. Son of a Beaver says, as much as I would love for the Vikings to sign Keenan Allen, our wide receiver depth is pretty dang good. I think the wide receiver depth can be very good. Is it for sure goes under my major camp questions, which is another podcast series in the few days leading up to training camp coming very soon. But is it very good? Because Rondale Moore, if Rondale Moore pops back to being Rondale Moore, that guy could be pretty exciting. If you look at from year 1 to year 2 with Rondale Moore, he was just a screen guy in year 1 to the point of, I mean, almost comedy, where they never had him run past 5 yards. And then year 2, they started using him as more of a real wide receiver. Then the wheels came off Arizona. Then he got hurt. But there were signs there that he could really be a guy, more than just a guy, but actually someone who can make an impact. If he works out and if Felton shows the signs, and I mean, then you're talking about a really good unit. If Rondale Moore is just not really back from that injury and Felton isn't coming along, it will feel a little light. So it swings on both of those guys. If they signed Keenan Allen, I'd be like, whoa, okay, all right. I mean, that's one heck of a wide receiving trio. I think if I'm Keenan Allen, though, I'm probably going somewhere else. I mean, if I'm Keenan Allen and I like getting the football, am I going to a place with Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison? Probably not. I would guess not. I agree with you, Daniel. Rushing a guy with an injury history like Darrisaw, you got to take it slow. It was a very serious injury, and if they don't play him week 1, there's no panic. I think the fact that he was back in minicamp at least opens the door for a week 1. And when we first saw him back there, it's like, whoa, okay, wow, that is shocking that he's actually doing these workouts, and maybe that puts him on track. But we do have to slow the roll a little bit. They went out and got a veteran backup tackle to make sure that if they need to play Justin School for 2 weeks, that they'll be in good shape. And they don't have to push Darrisaw back. It's much better to take one more week. And we talked about this with Hawkinson last year. It's much better to take 1 or 2 more weeks, even if the guy says he feels great, than it is to force him out there, pull a hamstring, because hamstring and ACL, for whatever reason, I think they go together, or other leg injuries, because there's compensation. Well, I'm not a doctor, but I see it happen sometimes. And that's something you want to avoid, because you don't want nagging injuries going down the stretch of a really important season. You'd rather miss the first 3 weeks. Dusty says with Felton, definitely feels like a guy that you can give some simple plays too early, but otherwise he'll need some time to learn routes, especially in KOC's offense. Yeah, I agree. Get him in there from time to time. Try to get the football in his hands. See if he could get something going. Especially, it might be a game by game thing. You might see, oh man, this Bears team, just for example, is playing in the parking lot. They are just put everybody back. They're playing cover 4. They're running their linebackers back, and they're just saying, hey, we're going to dare you to throw underneath. We're not going to let any deep balls go. Well, that might be a situation where you throw in Ty Felton. You just run him a little quick route, get him the football, and get him moving. Or it might be a situation where the offense is stalling and you need a spark, and you just run a jet sweep with Ty Felton to just get him the football. They just didn't have that last year. So now at least they've got someone, and maybe Rondale Moore too, that you can do something quick with. You can do a little change up, and it's not everything difficult on the quarterback. Because I did think last year at times we did reach a point toward the middle end of the season where it was just the Sam Darnold show. They weren't running very well. They weren't throwing short as well. And then it was like, all right, Sam Darnold, do something great. And asking him to do that all the time, he was able to do it for a while, but that was pretty tough. And, they did have a decent short game by the numbers. They just didn't do it a lot. Sam Darnold had the highest percentage of throws that went over 20 yards. And I think the lowest percentage of ones that were from 1 to 10 yards. That I think they could improve on. David says this current Vikings team is the oldest team in the league this year, and that worries me. Now I'm thinking 8.5 wins might be too high of a goal to reach. I cannot tell you how overrated the average age of a team is. Just insanely overrated. The teams that are young, first of all, they barely ever win, teams that are young. If you look at the studies on this of average age of teams that win the Super Bowl or go deep in the playoffs, it's actually veteran teams who win more than younger teams, which stands to reason because you have a lot more experience. The other part is when you talk about that, it's like, well, hey, Andrew DePaula, long snapper, stop screwing up the average age of this team. If you take off the long snapper, what's it look like? Most of the players, if we do this, who are the Vikings' core players? Their most important players. Justin Jefferson in his prime, Hockenson prime, Addison coming into his prime. That's three. Darrisaw is in his prime. Brian O'Neill, I would say, is closer to the end than the beginning, but he is late prime, still playing really, really well. Had a good season last year. Kelly is old, so there's one. Aaron Jones is old, there's two, but Jordan Mason is young, and Will Fry's in his prime. Donovan Jackson young. So, like, where's the ancient Vikings on the offensive side? On the defensive side, there's two guys who are old in the defensive front, but then Harrison Phillips, prime, Grenard, Van Ginkel, Cashman, all in their primes. Ivan Pace still young. Metellus, prime. And Byron Murphy, same deal. Blackman, I think, middle-ish, like young-ish. Rogers, young-ish. I mean, Harrison Smith, ancient, of course, like a million years old. But you see the point? Like their main pieces here are not ancient. They're often just in their prime. But a lot of teams, especially teams with expensive quarterbacks, they have a lot of guys playing those positions that are 20 years old or 22 years old because they don't have anybody there. So they have to draft somebody. So they have to throw in an undrafted free agent or just somebody who has just had 1 year of development after being a late round draft pick or something. The Vikings have proven players in their prime, which, yeah, their window for this group is not 9 years, but it's 2 at least. And then we'll see after that. So that's what I mean is that discussion of average age. If you have a young team, it might just mean that your guys are really unproven. And then there's a lot of questions, or you're just filling space because your quarterback is so expensive. It's misleading. And especially since, older teams tend to win. Brett says, can you explain the difference between slot corner and outside corner? The difference in skill set one must have to play either. Yeah. So nickel corners, think about Byron Murphy as a nickel corner, or if you are a little bit on the older side, not ancient, but a little bit older, Antoine Winfield. Think about the size of that guy, quickness, like the feet are very quick. There's a toughness element, especially Antoine Winfield. I mean, the toughest, right? So they're usually a little more undersized because they have very quick feet. Because there's a two-way go for the wide receiver. He can either go out to his right or out to his left. And on the outside, they can't run out because then they just go out of bounds. So you can only really run in or straight if you're on the outside. And that makes it a little easier for corners with like longer strides or who are taller or have more length. And outside corners don't have to tackle as much. They have to tackle, but they don't have to tackle as much because the nickel defender becomes a big part of all the run fits. So you have to have that toughness. I think you have to be quick-footed, also quick-minded. You have to read a lot of things in the middle of the field pretty fast. You got to have eyes on the quarterback a lot of times and read and react super fast. Whereas the outside corner, now this is all changing a little bit, and you see the size and shape of these guys changing because outside corners cannot often just be outside anymore with motion and with bunches and things like that. But usually they're thought of as being a little more like larger, stronger, physical, like getting their hands, as Xavier Rhodes, like getting hands onto a wide receiver, playing press coverage, stuff like that. So there is a different size type of skill set for nickels and outside corner. I think if Blackman is somebody who I thought when they picked him profiled a little bit as an inside guy, but he mostly played outside because he's really good at tracking the football. So I think you want that guy outside. But it's an interesting discussion. A lot of times it just is the mentality of the player. Do you have like a nickel mentality, which is you got to be a bit of a bulldog if you're going to play that spot. Also, Brett got the book. Oh, good. Oh, Lindsay's book. Yeah, great. Good to hear. Lindsay Young, my friend, wrote a children's book, and I gave a few away the other day. I'm glad that you got it. Son of a Beavers says, how would you feel about Jamal Williams as RB3 goal line running back? We always seem to struggle with the goal line. I think he would be a great locker room ad. Not against it. I'm thinking of Jordan Mason a little more as the goal line back that is going to get most of it, but it just doesn't it feel like there's going to be another running back who shows up here that there's not going to be an entire training camp that's just Ty Chandler versus undrafted from Jacksonville State, Trey Stewart, for the running back spot behind Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason. Somebody else, I think, is going to eventually be here as part of that RB3 competition. I don't know where Jamal Williams is at in his career. If he's still got the juice, running backs, they wear out pretty quickly. Where is he at health wise? If he wants to play for the Vikings, I don't know the situation at all with Jamal Williams, but there's usually free agent running backs that just kind of show up from time to time, like a Cam Akers, and you don't really expect it. How many teams did Latavius Murray play for? Just bounced into a couple of different teams, right? And so I think that there's somebody else who will eventually get here. I would not be against it if it's him, if it's someone experienced, but their lack of trust in Ty Chandler just showed so much last year that it's hard to believe that they're one injury away from Chandler playing half the role there. Or maybe that's changed. I don't know, but he's going to have to prove it. Daniel, does Brian Flores get a extended contract and pay bump to stay with the Vikings? I don't know. Because Brian Flores could look at it as, hey, things are going great, but look how good my team is. Maybe I'll wait till next year to negotiate this contract. I don't remember too many times that we've ever really discussed coordinators, but it is with their contracts and when they were up and when they weren't, because usually if you're going to leave, you better have a good situation if you're going to make a lateral move. If you're going to let your contract run out and then make a lateral move, because if Flores gets a head coaching job, he can always go. But if he lets his contract run out, then he's just going to the highest bidder. That's interesting. You don't see it very often. And I respect the business play if that's what he wants to do, because he is one of the highest touted and highest respected defensive coordinators in the league, and he has turned this thing around big time, and he deserves to be compensated for that. But if he wants to hit the open market and go to the highest bidder after, say the Vikings have a top 7 defense and they're playing in the divisional round and they lose, 14-9, and Flores' defense is great and everybody's talking about it. If he wants to go into free agency and see what team will pay him the most, maybe there is some other team that would do that. But what has happened with most of these situations that we've talked about? There's been a lot of drama. There's been a lot of, hey, will they re-sign Kwesi and all this other stuff? And are they going to trade Jefferson, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? And what usually ends up happening is, they didn't trade KOC. They just got it worked out in the end. And this is where, when you look around the league at some of the, ownerships around the league, they're pretty bad. And they don't pay people and they don't resolve these issues and they have a lot of drama and everything. The Wilfs are just not that way. Usually if there's a situation that comes up with a contract, they get it worked out. And that's what happened with Kwesi Adofo-Mensah. That's why, for the most part on this show, we were just pretty chill about the whole thing. Like, well, I'm raising an eyebrow and kind of wondering what's going on there, but it'll probably get worked out. And then it did. So I kind of feel the same way about Brian Flores, unless there's some really unique scenario where he wants to take all of his leverage and push his chips to the middle of the table on this year. Wouldn't it make sense to just get a deal done? This is the best place for him. It kind of reminds me of Metellus, actually. It's the best place for him, and he's really good for the Vikings. So why wouldn't they want to go forward together? Unless, there's, something else, but makes sense to me. Hey, if you're trying to maximize your dollars, though, there's nothing wrong with working out your contract. Jamin Davis is on the Jets. Yeah, he had one sack, I think, right? And it was like a big sack, but that was about it. Have I ever gotten the story on the Nudie McGlother nickname? There are different versions that I've heard, and I'm just going to leave it at that. But I will tell you that I will be calling him Dwight McGlothern, and that would be it. That would be it. I am going to just continue to call him Dwight. I don't feel comfortable calling another grown man Nudie. Freddie says over under 8.5 wins. I would be hitting the over pretty strongly. If I mean last year, and I know it's a different schedule, it's a different scenario, it's a different year, it's different health, all that sort of stuff. But if last year they can win 14 with Sam Darnold and a worse roster, I just don't see how they win 7 or 8 with a quarterback who's unproven, yes, but talented and has been in this offense for 2 years and all the other things around him. It would be the best 8 freaking win team in the entire league. I mean, I think that number is fully representative of the gambling world not knowing what to make of JJ McCarthy. But for me, if they win 8 games, that is a huge disappointment because they have talent to win 11, 12, if not more than that, but the schedule is really hard. But I mean, they have the talent to win double digit games, win the division. And the only reason they wouldn't would be either the health or if the quarterback doesn't play like he's supposed to. So I would go over on that. Stephanie, good to see you, Stephanie. Of all the position groups, which are the worst ones from the perspective of significant injuries out of that group that would have consequences on our season? So you're touching on a subject that in July I don't love because I feel like it's just such a downer. Like, don't be Stephanie Downer, Stephanie. I'm just kidding with you, but I know what you're saying. I mean, it's really a question about depth, right? Like, which position group has the most questionable depth that if there was a significant injury, like, it would be majorly problematic. If we kind of go through it a little bit, I mean, I think cornerback is probably the one that pops out the most because behind these 3 starters is Jeff Okudah, who's not proven in the league, and then Dwight McGlothern, who's not proven in the league. Safety is another one where, we just don't know what Theo Jackson is. And if you lost either him or Harrison Smith, then you're kind of asking Metellus to do something he's never done before. Where linebacker, they've got more depth this year. Defensive line, I think they have developed some guys who could mix in there, and they've got enough talent to be okay. Wide receiver, obviously, if Justin Jefferson gets injured, you're in a lot of trouble. But outside of that, like you can always bump up Jalen Naylor for a few weeks. Maybe that one's a little bit tenuous. And every team's offensive line is in a lot of trouble if you get serious injuries. So I think the answer is probably the group that we talk about the most, which is the secondary. Let's see. Adam, who are you most excited to watch when Netflix releases Quarterback tomorrow? So that is, who is on that? It's is it Burrow, Kirk, and someone else? So I guess the answer is I haven't paid a lot of attention to it. The first time Kirk was on was really interesting, and we talked a lot about it because it was very revealing behind the scenes about Kirk. And I mean, I'm as interested as the next guy to see how much they include and what is in there about Kirk, the draft being benched, like how that's all presented. I'm very interested to see, just out of my own curiosity, not that it really impacts the Vikings. I like that kind of stuff. I'm glad it stayed alive. The NFL Films is just not what it used to be back in the day, but it's that sort of content has stayed alive. And I always think of somebody watching it who is just getting into football and how cool that must be to see the behind the scenes stuff on the quarterbacks. I don't know if I'll really dive deep into it or if I'll spend a bunch of time. I guess if you guys tell me, it'll be just like the Favre documentary. Like a few of you said, hey, you should watch the Favre documentary, but most of you said it's not really anything you don't know. Same thing here. If you guys tell me, hey, you got to watch this quarterback thing, it's amazing, then okay, I'll probably watch it. But if it's more of the same for the follow-ups, I think the first time they did it, it was really revealing, but they did the wide receiver, not so much, even about Justin Jefferson, all that sort of thing. So I'll leave it up to you guys. I'll leave it up to you guys to tell me, hey, you got to watch it or don't bother. Angel Dust Senior, that is one heck of a name. Jordan Addison's over under 800 receiving yards this season. Your thoughts? It is a good over under because we still are sitting here waiting on a suspension or a ruling or anything white smoke out of a Los Angeles courtroom that tells us convicted or not. I would say over on that. I think that that's who he's going to be in this league, is a guy who gets between 900 and 1,000 yards every single year. Jefferson's going to take a lot of the attention, but Addison is still going to be there. He's been consistent, even when he's been banged up or even when he had to miss a couple games. He's still in that range. I do think they're going to throw the ball a ton. It's a good over under though, because I think it's going to be right in that ballpark. But I'm not 100% sure. I mean, it really depends. If he's missing 3 games, that makes it a lot harder. But even if he misses 3 games, I think he clears 800. Winhawk 77. Do you think Jordan Mason will have more rushing yards than Aaron Jones? I do not. I think that Aaron Jones will have more rushing yards, and that's health dependent, but that's why I don't like to talk about injuries in July, because everything is health dependent for every single season ever. If they're both 100% healthy for 17 games, Aaron Jones is more of the guy because he can do a lot more. He is a great wide receiver out of the backfield. He's a pass protector. I think Jordan Mason is a bruiser. Like, that's what he does. And Jones is kind of the brains of the operation. He's the old vet. He does everything. Where with Jordan Mason, it's going to be like, all right, you run that way. Here's a football, run over some dudes. And that dynamic element is going to keep Jones on the field a little bit more. My projection for this has been Jones is somewhere in the range of 900 and Jordan Mason somewhere in the range of 700, but Mason gets more touchdowns. How about that? Just to be specific. Dusty says, if you put Darrisaw on the Cowboys, he'd be getting all pro talk. Yeah, I mean, look, if you put anyone halfway decent on the Cowboys, they'll be talked about and debated endlessly. Same thing happened to Harrison Smith when he was getting snubbed every year for the Legion of Boom safeties. Well, that's a little bit of a different discussion. When you win, you get that conversation all the time. You're playing on national TV, you're getting a ton of attention, that sort of stuff. That's kind of how it goes. And I don't blame the world for talking about Earl Thomas and talking about Cam Chancellor. Like, those guys were great. But as far as, Harrison Smith, just the lack of big moments in the playoffs has probably kept him a little more out of that national conversation for the best safety in the NFL throughout his career. And that's why when people ask me about his Hall of Fame chances, my answer is always, I would vote for him. Absolutely. I think he's deserving. But do I think the outside world knows enough about Harrison Smith? Probably not. Probably not unless they go to the Super Bowl. Aaron, have I talked with Courtney about the Bears' outlook for the year? I have not, but she will definitely be on the show before week 1. I'm saving that. Saving that for a big week 1 preview appearance. Oh, actually, I have. I was on her podcast the other day. What am I thinking? I was on her podcast the other day talking about, I was talking about the Vikings, obviously, but you could check that out. I forget that it's Bears something. You can find it. We're kind of talking about how with Caleb Williams, it's just so hard to figure. It's so hard to put a finger on, because I'm starting to think that the truth is in the middle with Caleb Williams, kind of like all controversial players. I followed the WNBA. The truth is in the middle with Angel Reese. Like, some people say she's like the worst player in the league. Some people say she's the best. Neither one of those are true. Cam Newton used to be this way. Dak Prescott is kind of this way. Like, Cam Newton, it used to be, some people thought that Cam Newton wasn't even a great quarterback because of like quarterback rating. Like, okay, well, I guess if you throw out 13 touchdowns that he ran for or whatever, did you want him to throw screen passes instead to get those touchdowns instead of running them in? Caleb Williams, the offseason discussion is somewhere in the middle. I think we should all agree that Caleb Williams' story is not written in the National Football League after one bad season. But if you try to just write off all of that as all Eberflus, all the Bears and their culture, you can't do that. I mean, he should know how to watch film. He should be seeking out people to watch film. And also, he shouldn't be making those excuses about nobody teaching him, or his dad shouldn't be making excuses for him and things like that. I mean, there's a lot of those like excuses that sort of plagued him a little bit when he was in college. I thought the general disposition, does he really have that dog in him? I don't know. Or is it always going to be kind of the slumped shoulders going over to the bench and the high flashes that are exciting? But those high flashes, you also can't ignore those either. There were moments and there were games where he was really, really good. So that's kind of how I look at that. But Courtney will definitely be back onto the show before week 1. Absolutely. Bob says the chances we sign Wentz before the season. I want to go. I would watch the heck out of long snapper. Hey, I agree with you guys. Maybe that should be my thing. Maybe I should take a break with Purple Insider and produce the next great long snapper documentary. You want me? Maybe this year is the best year to do it. Nothing going on, right, with the Vikings. No, I'm kidding. But as far as Carson Wentz, I don't know, maybe like 25%, 20%, maybe 20. It's called the Chicago Bears podcast. Is it really? I don't even know. I can't even remember, and I went on it. But yeah, no, Aaron, you're right that Jeremiah Searles loved playing with Cam Newton, and I think dispelled. He was on the show a couple of years ago and dispelled a lot of the nonsense about Cam Newton. He was a great leader of that team. He was a great quarterback. Wasn't the best quarterback in the league and isn't a Hall of Famer. But as we know, this is a frustration I have for all sports all the time, is that what ESPN and a lot of the like talking head type of culture things have done is either you are horse crap or you are the GOAT, and anything in between with any nuance or context, you might as well just forget about it. It's this guy on the right is going to scream that so-and-so is the GOAT, and this guy's going to scream on the left that he's terrible. And that's discussion. And that's why you guys listen to this show, because we don't do that. And we look into the evidence. Oh, Jared Goff is the other quarterback. Okay. On the quarterback documentary, we look into the evidence of what everything says, but don't sign Wentz. Well, Wentz is a backup quarterback. I mean, would probably be fine. I never really got to the answer to the question. Maybe it's like 20-25%, because if Sam Howell struggles, they're going to look for other options. And that could be Wentz. That could be Tannehill. That could also be somebody that they trade for. But I think maybe 70% chance that Sam Howell is just the backup quarterback. Okay. You guys ready for some Mondays with Maggie? Maggie Robinson standing by. Let's bring in Maggie at Syracuse, the Syracuse University this evening. Maggie Robinson, intern Maggie. What is going on? How are you?
I am good. We were talking earlier, the shift from being a fully functioning member of society and with a job and a salary and responsibilities to being a student is a hard pivot. So I feel like I'm recalibrating my brain to like take in a lot of new information and learn how to study again, learn how to do work on a different kind of timeline. Like now I go home and I'm like, oh, this is when I have to do all my work versus I would do all my work from 9 to 5. So I'm just reteaching myself how to be a student right now.
Right. For those who don't know, you were a producer with the NFL and you are going back to grad school to be in front of the camera as you are right now. So where would you like to begin the festivities this evening?
Well, I have a few thoughts based on my listening to the past hour. And the first one is my biggest pet peeve, which as a person going into the broadcasting space, I got to keep this top of mind, mispronouncing names. We even talked about this, talked about school in one of my classes today. Pronouncing names is like the most respectful thing you can do as a broadcaster. We're paid to speak and to run our mouth. The least you can do is to get a guy's name right. And this reminded me, so I was on the broadcasting team doing production for the NFL at the draft every year. It was me and a girl named Lucy Popko, who was my manager. If you watch the NFL Explained documentary, she's on it. She was on NFL Network this past year at the draft. Anyways, we would create, mostly her, but a pronunciation guide. So we'd go up to all the guys at the combine, record all their names from their voice, be like, okay, can you say it? And you'd be like, Matthew Coller, tight end, Georgia. And then we would create a little document for RG to play. And so when he was sitting on his private jet, shuttling back and forth about to go to draft, he's sitting there playing all the different audio recordings, be like, how do I say this name? Here's all the really hard ones that we'd like put in the list for him. And I don't know, it's just, I think the behind the scenes is so interesting. And I don't think people realize that we actually spend a lot of time coaching him up back there in the green room. We have pronunciation on the cards that people don't see that's like phonetically spelled out. Of even Caleb, he comes out, he's like, how do you say Caleb Williams? We're like, it's Caleb. Let's not overthink it. You got it. All you, dude. Like, here we go. But I just thought that was so interesting.
I mean, these guys at the draft, they work their whole life for this moment. They don't want to be called something else when they get
Right.
up there. Like they want their name to be pronounced correctly for their family. And it's something that they're going to save on their phone and replay a million times and all that sort of stuff throughout the rest of their life. So you want to make sure that you're getting that right. And I think just in general, if you're on a broadcast, there's no excuse for that because the Vikings have PR people, the players are there in the locker room. Like you can ask any of those. But I think where I hear it the most is the national talking head person, which seems to not really care. And that's where I think needs to be better. I mean, if you're going to say Jonathan Grenard had double digit sacks 2 years in a row and was in the top 5 in quarterback pressures, calling him Jonathan Greenard. He even said in his opening press conference, you can call me John, you can call me Jonathan, you can call me JG, just don't call me Greenard. So it was like the one thing that the guy says. And I think what it comes down to with the Vikings is, yes, it is just lazy broadcasting. I also think that it's relevancy, that when a team like a Kansas City Chiefs player is not getting their name pronounced wrong,
Right.
because they're going to be on that national broadcast every single week. They're going to get a ton of attention, a ton of conversation, and nobody is going to say any of their guys wrong. Whereas the Vikings, they weren't on national TV a lot last year, even as they were winning a lot. But I think people thought they weren't going to be that good. Their over under was 6.5. And then even as they went along, it was like, okay, is Sam Darnold for real? 30 seconds later, yes, no. Okay, back to the Cowboys, right? Back to the Chiefs, back to whatever discussion. And I think this year is the year where that changes because of JJ McCarthy, because of the national attention on the Minnesota Vikings. We're going to start seeing a lot more people get it right and not call him Christian Darrisaw. We're going to see him call him Darrisaw and get it right.
I mean, some of these aren't even that hard, to be completely honest with you. I think people just need to step it up. It is really like the bare minimum of this profession is to read a word correctly. Come on. You have 18 people writing your scripts, producing, editing, behind the scenes. The words coming out of your mouth can at least be spoken before you go on air once or twice.
Well, there are some questionable former athletes and broadcasters that end up on TV. I will not name who I think that is, but there are some.
I
So,
will say, not to just keep harping on this school thing, but it is interesting now that I'm here learning all of this stuff. I think a lot of people assume this job is much easier than it is. And I say that because a lot of people just think, oh, you're just yapping, you're just running your mouth. I can do that. That's awesome. There's actually a lot of journalistic skill required to do this job that I think in the digital age maybe has been turned down or disregarded. And Instagram and TikTok and Twitter are making everyone think that they're like a citizen journalist, but I don't know.
well, this is a little bit of a gripe of mine with them hiring former players. Now, I have a former player on this show, Jeremiah Searles, who is one of the smartest and most locked in former players you will ever find in your entire life. He is an agent as well as a podcast host and former player. So he knows everything that's going on in the league, and he's so phenomenal at breaking down the Vikings and everything else. But because he's Jeremiah Searles, 5-year NFLer who was mostly a swing tackle, he doesn't get on ESPN. They want big name type of guys, even if you're, I guess Dan Orlovsky might be the exception to that, but a quarterback he's really good at it. But a lot of times it's some big name type of people who I think are not as good of broadcasters, but move the needle more where, oh, this guy said this. So now it becomes a viral clip that gets put out on all social media and stuff like that. And even like Asante Samuel has got himself in the viral rotation lately for just saying really dumb stuff on whatever podcast he's doing. He said Chris Carter was overrated. Like, okay, yeah, sure. If Chris Carter's overrated, then everyone's overrated. Like Chris Carter is easily one of the great receivers in history, but congrats on your dumb, stupid, pointless opinion, former player guy. And congrats for everybody who shared it. I lost brain cells now having had to listen to that. But that's what's getting a lot more attention than a Jeremiah Searles great breakdown of the Vikings offensive line, because that's what gets people worked up and gets people yelling at stupid stuff. So I don't know. I feel like the networks have followed that in a lot of ways. Like,
Mhm.
hey, if we have like famous people come on TV and say dumb stuff, it'll go viral. So we should do that. And you shouldn't. You truly shouldn't.
The views and what they will do for the views and for more ad dollars, I don't know if we know the limit of it. I think they're just going to keep reaching and keep reaching. One person who I do like, though, and I know we're kind of off topic here, but Jason Kelce. I do enjoy Jason Kelce because I think his energy is so good and he is so authentic to himself. That man isn't trying to be anyone else other than fully himself.
Offensive linemen are a different breed. They're just a different breed.
Absolutely. My other question for you, I'm truly curious. What'd you get up to this 4th of July? What'd you spend your time doing?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Not to air
Absolutely
you out
nothing.
on the pod.
No, the answer is truly nothing. I recorded a podcast. I wrote a couple of articles to get ahead a little bit, and I grilled and went to a WNBA game, and like that was it. Not a whole lot going on over here.
Did you put back 70.5 hot dogs though when you grilled?
I did not. No, I think
my
my maximum is like 2 probably
2?
is as many hot dogs. I might be able to do 3 if I'm really hungry, but I am not Joey Chestnut, nor can I stomach watching that. I mean, congrats to him. He's made a lot of money doing it, but that is just not my thing.
I mean, he's an elite athlete, I guess. 70.5 hot dogs in 10 minutes is truly insane.
Yeah, I
can't comprehend that. I don't know, but I just had to highlight him.
Isn't he more of a circus act than an athlete? I think he's more of a circus. Like, do we think that people who, I don't know, blow flames out of their nose, is that like an athletic type of thing? Because I think the same thing for eating hot dogs. I
You know
just
what
don't.
my hot take is? Like, and hear me out. I don't think chess is a sport. People will be like, it's a mental game.
No, I don't think it's a sport. I think it's a game.
I think these are on the two polar opposites. You have the very refined like chess, people arguing it's a sport, and then you have hot dog eating.
That's not a sport.
But
that's a contest.
On ESPN. Although
no, there's a lot of stuff on ESPN.
Put some stuff on there that you're like, why is the mullet competition on ESPN3?
There's like a cornhole thing. Yeah, no, there's not. Everything on ESPN can't be a sport.
Cannot. Okay, now that we've acknowledged that there's absolutely nothing really going on in the NFL, elephant in the room has been addressed. I did want to go over a few quick around the NFL moves. Starting off with Vikings legend wide receiver Randy Moss is coming back to Sunday NFL Countdown after his pancreatic cancer issue of last season where he took some time away. He showed up, I believe, at Christmas. And was it Christmas or Super Bowl? He made one appearance and it was a little rough for him. Energy was low, but super exciting to have him back. I thought that was a very feel-good story to kick it off with.
No, definitely. And last year, one of the great moments of the entire season was Justin Jefferson in his touchdown celebration shouting out Randy Moss as he was going through that. And you could just tell how much he means to Jefferson, to Kevin O'Connell, to the organization, still to the Minnesota Vikings. One of the coolest things that I ever had a chance to be a part of was when the Vikings surprised Randy Moss, letting him know that he was going to be in the Ring of Honor. So they had sort of, misled him a little bit, like, come up to the facility. We got some things for you or something. So he showed up and then they announced it to him that he was going in the Ring of Honor. And he did an incredible press conference, was thoughtful and insightful. And the thing about Randy Moss is that he was so, I think, on edge during his career. And it was a very different time in the NFL. It was a very different organization for the Minnesota Vikings at that time, that there were a lot of regrettable moments for him over his career with the Vikings. And when he left the NFL, you wondered, like, what's going to happen to this guy? Is he going to be all right? Or what? And his post career has been incredible because I think he's really told his story, his perspective, his point of view. It doesn't justify everything with him that happened with the Vikings running over a parking attendant. But I think it really shows you how, like, super smart Randy Moss really is. And he's an introspective, thoughtful person who on TV has been a star. Like those things that we were just talking about, like, oh, these star players who go on and just say really dumb stuff. That is not Randy Moss. He is a great broadcaster and really fun to watch on ESPN. So I'm certainly glad that he's going to be coming back and that his health is going in the right direction. But it's part of a bigger story for Randy Moss of somebody that you just didn't really know with his temperament. How is he going to turn out post-career? And he's had a great kind of renaissance in his post-career.
I do want to wind it back because you said something that I didn't know. Did he run over a parking attendant? And do you mind elaborating? Because I don't recall, / I might not have been paying attention to the NFL at that point in my life.
It kind of was what it was. Yeah. I mean, that's what it is what it sounds like. I don't know. I don't have the police report on me, but he was in his car and there was some sort of dispute with a parking attendant, and he did not like run the person flat over, but nudged them enough to draw the attention of the police. And I think he got arrested for it. And it was just one of those stupid controversies and a dumb thing for him to do. But there was also, sideline meltdowns and locker room things and stuff like that that had him kind of always in the news over one thing or another. And play when I want to play was also his famous thing that he told Sid Hartman of the Star Tribune. I play when I want to play, which he kind of clarified wasn't really exactly what he was trying to say. But, I mean, that is it made him sound like he was kind of, I do whatever I want because I'm Randy Moss. And there was a different set of rules for Randy Moss than everyone else at one time. But he was also a crazy talented player who cared so much about the X's and O's of the game, the execution. And I think it was Bill Belichick who said he was like one of the smartest players that he was ever around, that Randy would come to him and tell him, here's what I'm seeing. We need to do these different things. And Belichick would just do it, because if Randy Moss was saying it, then he would do it. And so he's a complicated guy. There's a great documentary called Rand University about him growing up. I think it was the best thing for him because it helped you understand where he came from and why he was so standoffish as a part of the Minnesota Vikings when he first got to the NFL. And I think since he's grown out of that and he's got kids, and one of them was at LSU, another one had just tried out for the Vikings briefly. I mean, he's grown up a lot so clearly, and it's a great post-career story for him.
That's
but he did run over a parking attendant. That did happen.
The other thing I realized, and this is really embarrassing, and I'm actually really outing myself to the listeners, you guys, so I would like to apologize preemptively. I didn't know the term Moss came from Randy Moss.
Oh my gosh, where did you think it came from?
I don't know. I just thought, I was like, maybe it's people in Gen Z love to create words out of absolutely nothing and then just like throw them into sentences. So I was like, you know what? Maybe this is just like a verb that we've been using, and like, you've been mossed,
Okay, that's funny. So the reason is because no player ever in NFL history was better at jumping over people and catching the ball than Randy Moss. So that's where it came from. Now, are you familiar with, you've heard the term like, oh, I stan this person, meaning like you're a big fan. Do you know where that comes from?
I don't know where it comes from. Someone in the comments is saying, bless your heart. That's such a Southern thing to say.
It's so funny. Like things from my era generation that have transferred over that I hear young people say that they don't even know why they're saying it.
What is that one? I don't know that at all.
There is a very famous hip hop song by Eminem.
Okay.
You know him, yes.
I'm familiar with that one. You got me.
Okay, all right. And the song is called Stan, and it is about a completely psychotic fanboy. And the entire song is written from the perspective of the Eminem fan writing letters to Eminem. And it starts out fairly innocent, and then it gets crazier and crazier as it goes along. It's one of the best hip hop songs of all time. So if you are a crazy fan for somebody, you say, I am a stan for whoever. That's where it comes from.
I'm learning so much today, you guys.
What
I go back to school and my brain just explodes with knowledge. This is awesome.
I mean, there is, when it comes to Viking stories, people in the comments should just nominate stories that you need to know.
Oh yeah. Can you guys make me like a top 3 list, like right now, of what are the stories Matthew needs to recount to me? Because I need to get up on my Vikings lore. He already told me a few of them. I got sent the video of the roof literally collapsing at the old Metrodome. That was wild because for some reason in my mind, I was like, oh, the roof collapsed. Maybe like a fraction of it came in. No, the whole thing came down. It was just like a waterfall of snow. Where'd they end up playing?
They played at the Gopher Stadium, and that resulted in the end of Brett Favre's career because they played at the Gopher Stadium, which was completely frozen, and Brett Favre hit his head on the frozen ice field, which they should not have been playing on, And that was the way that ended. Yes, folks, I think I did at one point reference the boat thing.
I have looked up the boat incident. I don't
Yeah.
know if that's FCC compliant to speak about on air, but
Absolutely
I
not.
am aware of.
Also, there's no way that I could go through that whole thing without just starting to giggle like a
giggle.
child. Yeah, it's pretty funny, but I know you guys could do better
So let's keep it PG.
that. Yeah,
Let's keep it podcast light. But you let me know. Bounty Gate. Is that something you know of, Matthew?
Oh, you are not familiar with Bounty Gate. This is
I'm
fun,
not.
actually.
This is fun. This is a cool game. Let's go.
So, once upon a time, Brett Favre had the Minnesota Vikings in the NFC Championship game. This was 2009.
Okay.
And they were en route to winning that game. They were the better team against the New Orleans Saints. But behind the scenes, the New Orleans Saints had a game where players were getting paid to cause the opposition injuries. And the player that they were going after and trying to get more money for injuring was Brett Favre in that game. And if you watched it now, knowing all of the rules that have been put in place since to protect quarterbacks, you would think this was a different sport, the way that they beat up Brett Favre in that game. And then it came out later that they had this bounty thing. Like if you injure certain players, you get extra money from your teammates and that kind of thing. And Sean Payton, now this is where it gets really funny. So Sean Payton was suspended for an entire year because of this. And then here's where it gets really nuts. They made a movie about it on Netflix and Kevin James plays Sean Payton.
What the heck?
That also happened.
I also was just so unaware that Sean Payton was removed for a year.
Yes.
And man, I must have been living it. I was also 10 years old. So
just there's the Wizator is another great one.
That
was so Ontario Smith, and I could get back to Vikings fans' hatred of Sean Payton momentarily, because in that game, Favre throws across his body, throws the interception, they lose, the Saints go on to win the Super Bowl. And part of the reason was that Favre would have run for a first down on the key play had they not injured the crap out of him for the entire game, right?
Oh my gosh.
Right. So there's all of that. And I'll explain the Wizator in a second. But the reason they also hate Sean Payton was in the Minneapolis Miracle game, which you do know about.
I do know about that one. I did my research.
In the Minneapolis Miracle game, the Saints had taken the lead with just seconds to go right before the miracle. And Sean Payton started doing the skull chant like this to mock Vikings fans, looking around with a big bleep-eating grin on his face, oh, yeah, skull, whatever. And then he messed around and found out. And so they've always hated him for that as well.
Fair enough. He's also, he just seems like a very direct, blunt person. Like you don't get much personality from Sean Payton.
You could say that. Yeah. Maybe doesn't seem like the guy that you would necessarily want to spend the whole July 4th weekend with. The Wizator, that was a running back by the name of Ontario Smith. Okay. And the way that I have heard this story before is, now at the current moment, the NFL does not care at all about drugs. They stopped caring. They stopped worrying about if guys got a weed citation or, tested positive for X, Y, and Z. But for a long time, this was a really big deal in the NFL. And they would do this drug testing. And the way that I've heard this story from Kevin Seifert, now with ESPN, back with the Star Tribune, is that he got a call from someone at the Minneapolis St. Paul airport and said, "You're going to want to come down here, and it's Vikings related." And they had pulled out of this running back Ontario Smith's bag this thing called a Wizator, which is meant to cheat on drug tests.
No.
And I will just allow your imagination or Google to help you figure out how exactly that works, but it is called the Wizator. Now, let me add to this story that 2 separate times this Wizator has been sold at auction. And yes, the Wizator involved in question was sold at auction and was in some random sports bar in, I don't know, someplace in Minnesota, and then was recently sold again. So if anyone knows who's got the Wizator,
people are sick.
That's sick.
Save your money. What are you doing?
Oh no, yeah. There's the 96 questions is another one that's being brought up that who I don't even know how to go down that rabbit hole. There was a player this has gone viral and now it's even funnier. There was a player for the Vikings who used to do this little shtick where he would go around the locker room and he would ask players random questions.
Sure.
And he'd like to be a little edgy with it sometimes. And he once asked a bunch of players which player in the locker room they would not let their sister date.
Oh, this is like the question. This has been going around college locker rooms too. And for some reason, their communications teams think it's fine to put that on the internet, which I don't agree with. However,
Yeah. Yeah. So they all said Stefon Diggs, all of them, except for, which now is so much funnier, right?
oh my
With his
God.
own love boat incident.
Sure.
So much funnier. But then they got to Stefon Diggs and they said, who would you not let your sister date? And he said, Stephen Weatherly. And he's like,
Who's
why?
Stephen Weatherly?
Well, Stephen Weatherly was this guy who went to Vanderbilt. He's a great guy. He's like really smart. And he's just like,
Sure.
what do you mean, Stephen Weatherly? He's like the nicest guy. And he's like, why? And Diggs goes, because he's ugly. And they posted it. They posted it. And
No.
it still shows up from time to time, and it is
Oh,
incredibly funny. Sorry, Stephen Weatherly. Again, great guy, didn't deserve it,
he's
but
just catching strays left and right. I see. I find issue with that question because yes, it's really funny, but that's the question that like circulates in your group chat. That video doesn't actually need to make the internet. Like,
no.
we don't need to see the Georgia Bulldogs talking about who they would like to like date their sister. Bad press for everyone involved.
Yeah, it just goes down
Man.
a weird place, and it did with Diggs, and it ended up in a weird place, which involved Cardi B, which now I saw they might have broken up. So
Oh, did that? Wow, you're more in tune with pop culture than I am. That's scary. My
I
goodness.
just, yeah, I saw one tweet that said like Cardi B erased all references to Stefon Diggs, and I was like, I mean,
T.
I didn't think they were in it for the long haul, but
No, could have spelled that one out for you.
none of
He's
my
focusing on
business.
football, Matthew. He's recommitted to the game, love of the sport, ball is life. He's back.
No more, bubble gum or whatever he was handing out on that boat.
Pop rocks, whatever that was. I don't know. That was
Well,
fun, guys. Thank you for sending those around. I'm banking up my knowledge now. We realized, I don't know, this is not a real big realization, but Matthew has incredible Vikings knowledge and lore that I don't. And also, the age gap is such that you remember things from when I was quite literally a child, not to rub it in, but it's fun to hear it because I was not like cognizant of the NFL in the same way.
It does feel like, oh, I should tell you about the Randy Moss and the mooning. Are you not familiar with the mooning?
He dropped his pants.
Okay.
This man
Yeah.
dropped
All
his
right.
pants and now he's a really respected. See, the thing is,
The,
can I say one thing?
the pants didn't actually come down, but I'll have to tell
Okay.
you the story.
Because my perspective on Randy Moss, from where I sit, from what I've seen, is that super well respected broadcaster, really intelligent, very thoughtful, family guy, honorable legacy. And now I'm hearing all this, and it's just kind of it's painting a more full photo.
It was a little bit of a different world.
Okay.
So I'll tell you the whole story here. This is kind of like our July 4th cookout, and we're just, sitting around the fire here telling stories.
I love it.
It's from the old person who was around for this stuff. So the year was 2004. Somebody correct me if I got the year wrong. I think it's 2004.
Okay.
And the Vikings are in the playoffs playing against the Green Bay Packers. Now, the Green Bay Packers had a tradition of mooning the opposing team's bus. They would stand outside, and when the opposing team's bus would pull in, then Packers fans would moon the bus. So Randy Moss decided to have a little bit of fun with the Packers. They were ahead in the game, late in the game. It's in the playoffs, and Moss just completely roasts the Packers corner, catches a touchdown, and then turns around to the Packers fans and pretends. Now, this is important.
Okay.
Pretends to pull his pants down and moon them. Now, this would have been just like a funny little, like, oh, Randy Moss, you old dog. But Joe Buck lost his absolute freaking mind. And Joe Buck said on the broadcast, that is a disgusting act. And of course, it has lived in infamy, him saying that the t-shirts. I mean, there are t-shirts you can buy that say the disgusting act with Randy Moss doing the moon. And it became a thing. It became such a thing in that following week that the owners of the Vikings at the time demanded, this not the current ownership, it was the previous
Okay.
ownership, demanded that Joe Buck not broadcast the next Vikings game because he was biased against the Vikings
No
because he had
way.
said, yes, yes,
Did he?
yes.
Did they have him
Yeah,
back on?
no, he broadcast the next
Yeah,
game. I mean, obviously, like they weren't, Fox wasn't going to take him off the network for thinking that a mooning
sure.
was a disgusting act. And Joe Buck has since said that he regretted the call, that he overreacted, and that the Minneapolis Miracle, Diggs sideline unbelievable, has cleared out all the bad blood. Mostly, there are some fans who are hanging on to their hatred for Joe Buck, but for a very, very long time, Vikings fans despised Joe Buck because of
No
the
way.
disgusting act. But now you can appreciate like the lore of it and the funny nature of the entire incident.
That's
So,
great. The fact that he did so I have a question though. Did he not see that the pants stayed on?
yeah, I mean, he did, but I think that he just like Randy had that year, especially. So Randy got traded after that year to the
Oh.
Raiders. It was
Was it
going, it was bad with him. It was
was it
like,
like behavioral issues or was it a combo of all of
it
them?
was
Like
all that. It was all that.
okay, okay.
Red McCombs, yes, was the owner at the time, and he was the one that really sent out one of the funniest like press releases maybe ever. And actually, we dug this up because so this led to something else, which was after, and now this I know you've heard.
Okay.
So after that happened, the local media waited outside the Vikings facility for Randy Moss to come out. And he came out to his truck, and a local photog said to him, hey, Randy, how are you going to pay that fine? And he said, straight cash, homie. And since then, it has been the most famous saying in Minnesota. I did an article with the journalist who asked him last year about that entire story. It was really fun. But
That's so
straight, if
good.
you've ever heard straight cash, homie, that is where
Straight
it came from.
from me. I didn't okay, I'd heard it, did not know that was the context. That's awesome. Oh, so he had an attitude. He had some ego to him.
That is putting it very lightly.
Very
Yes.
lightly?
Yes.
Okay.
Very lightly.
This is funny now also hearing the whole Joe Buck commentary because from my perspective, if I were working at the NFL in the role that I had back then when this happened, we have a Monday morning meeting with all of the main game day departments. So you have security, you got broadcasting, you got field operations, you got like the main ones that are like game specific. You have all your officiating stuff. And for broadcasting, we have people tracking the commentary of all the games. So on every game, we have someone in the league watching, charting what's being said. Are we reading our promos right? Are we getting in all our ad reads? Like we're making sure everything's happening. And one of the things is checking in on what the broadcasters are saying and flagging if there's anything that needs to be brought up in that Monday morning. They're like, is someone going to bring this up to us and say that this was a problem? Or is this going to rise really high in the org really fast that like we need to put together a thing where, oh, we actually reached out to Fox and we talked to their producer and he said it was okay. So it's just interesting to see the behind the scenes of what was probably happening at that moment right after that game was like, okay, man, you can't say that. But also like, we're not going to do anything about it because you're Joe Buck.
I'm sure. Well, yeah. I mean, at the time, Joe Buck was not Joe Buck of now because he was a pretty young broadcaster at the time. Joe Buck, and some may have claimed nepotism here, but he was a good young broadcaster. But he got into big positions in Major League Baseball and the NFL at a fairly young age. So 2004, it wasn't like he was a 50-year-old guy. I think that's maybe
Mm,
part of it, just a little bit more on the inexperienced side and overreacted to what happened. And I think that he thought it was kind of like his place to make a
ah,
strong statement because see the play-by-play broadcasters of the previous era before Joe Buck, like the Bob Costas, who I'm sure you will endlessly hear about at Syracuse,
Syracuse, they won't
but
stop talking about him. Him
oh,
and Mike Tirico, those are the
unbelievable.
man.
But Bob Costas was a very like principled, very serious guy. And so there's probably some play-by-play broadcasters now who would just laugh like, okay, Randy Moss, folks. And then they would move on. But Costas kind of had this like, I am responsible for this, the
Mm,
seriousness of the sports. And
the sanctity of football.
yes, yes, the sanctity of everything with Bob Costas. No disrespect, I loved him too, but that's kind of like how he was, and I think that Buck was trying to kind of be that, like, oh,
Mm,
this is just but everybody was a little more uptight, I think, back then about stuff like that. Now we're
Yeah.
like, I don't know, the world could end tomorrow. Who cares if he moons somebody?
Do what you want. That's fine. And we
Right.
have like NFL social in the back, like taking a video, putting it straight online for the views, I'm sure.
Right. Right.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Oh, Dusty in the comments saying you don't get revoked from Notre Dame and kicked out of Florida State for not having an edge. Again, guys, I'm learning so much. Did not know that happened.
You have to watch
Wow.
Rand. Yeah, you have to watch Rand University. Great
Okay.
documentary. It's only like 90 minutes long. Like,
Okay.
put off your homework and watch that. You'll learn more from that.
Rand, I'm putting in my thing. Rand University. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, Syracuse. I have other homework to attend to. It's called football.
Yeah, exactly.
That was
Were we
fun.
supposed to talk about something else tonight? Did you have something else?
Another piece of news was our guy Darren Waller unretiring, but doing the typical retiree move where he said, actually, the Northeast and the cold is not for me anymore. I want to go to Miami and I'll sign a 1-year contract because I want to go play in the warm. I want to do the snowbird thing. And he's moving down there. So we took like a season off and was like, kind of getting an itch. Like, I need to do this again. I'm getting bored. So he's back.
I would advise the Miami Dolphins to tread lightly with Darren Waller. Darren Waller quit football because he didn't feel like blocking, was his explanation for leaving the New York Giants, which doesn't give you a whole lot of confidence. He supposedly demanded a trade out of Las Vegas because the coach of the Raiders at the time, and I'm not making this up, accidentally revealed his engagement or his marriage or something. Yeah, I think it was his engagement. Yeah, that the coach of the team had said something like, yeah, Darren's getting married or whatever, and it hadn't been announced yet. So that was in part a reason why he demanded a trade. And then now he's saying he doesn't want to play in the Northeast. Also, that engagement resulted in a very quick divorce because he had married WNBA player Kelsey Plum. And then he made a rap video.
What my brain is exploding today. I'm learning so much. No way.
So he made a rap video. All of this has nothing to do with anything on the field, but he made a rap video where a woman who looks just like his wife stabbed him in the back and killed him. And so that's what he's been up to over the last year. I'm just going to throw it out there that the odds of this working out great for the Miami Dolphins are pretty low. So I personally, if I was the Dolphins, would have just said thanks, but no thanks. Maybe you should stick to rapping.
Okay, this is juicy. I'd known all these facts, but had not put them all together. I knew, obviously, he went on a podcast and started dropping expletives saying he didn't want to be blocking. He was playing fullback. That wasn't for him, whatever. And it sounded like he just didn't like what he was doing, got angry, and was like, fine, I quit, and had a little toddler moment. And then realized that, oh, all my friends are still playing and I'm actually still physically active. And this kind of sucks. And my rap career flopped, right. And my wife broke up with me and is now thriving.
Yeah, I don't think it's gone that well for Darren Waller since his one really great. Oh no, we're not talking about Darren Sharper. I'll let you Google that one. That was too dark. Too dark for a fun podcast. Yeah, that one goes into the Visante. Oh my gosh.
Oh,
you guys.
Okay, given that reaction,
you guys are all right. Okay, the Visante. I can't look directly at you. I'm telling you, the Visante Shenko one. There was a playoff game that the Vikings won. Of course, you guys had to bring that one up. And the post game locker room video didn't consider that players may or may not have been changing behind some of the players that they were interviewing.
Sure, that's normal. It's locker room.
And we saw a lot of Visante Shenko. And what I mean is all of Visante Shenko. And it got, there was a lot going on there. There was, that got around. And
this is on broadcast television?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there would have been a meeting about this. There would have been.
There was definitely a meeting about
this one. Don't Google, actually. There would have been a lot of Visante Shenko. And he was fine with it, but it was like,
hey, free promo, my guy.
it was at the right time where social media had just really got going, and it spread like wildfire what had gone across broadcast television. So There is the
Oh god.
Visante Shanko one. But yeah, the Miami Dolphins, let's just go right back to that. They are they're just desperate, right? They're just flailing
Yeah.
and kind of maybe a little sad right now. I just
Yeah.
don't I see that team as being the ultimate kind of just stuck franchise. How do they get better? Like they've lost a lot of talent, and I just if you're signing Darren guys.
Guys, y'all brought it up. I would just like to clear this up. You put it into the chat. Matthew is just the mouthpiece of the chat.
Yep.
So
Yep.
let's
Well,
keep that there.
it's funny. It's funny enough to mention on the
Hilarious.
show, and it is a very memorable moment. But anyway, so I just think that's the really bottom line. If you're desperate enough to be bringing in Darren Waller with all of that baggage, then
Yeah.
you just got problems, and I just don't see it going in a good direction for them.
Yeah. So what, they traded Johnny Smith to the Steelers. I'm still a little confused why they've got rid of him. What?
I mean, Jonnu Smith and Jalen Ramsey clearly not happy with the situation.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty telling about like this guy's getting older in his career and he wants, although he goes to the Steelers. I don't know if they can really win, but at least they're taking a shot at it with Aaron
Yeah.
Rodgers. Maybe his contract is some part of that, but he's got a good contract. So I think it was just he doesn't believe in where they're going. And then Jonnu Smith is a fine weapon for them. Was he looking to get out? I'm not really sure why they had to move on from him because he seems like he's a good fit for that type of offense. He can run after catch. And now, it's a better weapon for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I thought the Steelers came out of that trade pretty well.
On top for
They
sure.
Yeah, they gave up Minkah Fitzpatrick, but it was after a year where he had gone down quite a bit. So I don't know. I just don't to me it was like a lateral thing for the Dolphins. They didn't get better. They got worse, probably not better. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, thinking about people unretiring and coming back, we thought we'd play a fun game of let's look at people who recently retired and let's try to build the craziest Vikings super team and see if I was one of the Wilfs and had that much money and power, would I sign them? And to start this off with, Frank Ragnow, because how can you not? Center from the Detroit Lions recently announced his retirement. It kind of sent shockwaves through the league. Yeah, I am taking this man so quickly. We're kind of gonna, for the sense of this argument, overlook the injuries. He's playing and he's enjoying playing. He's not in pain when he's playing. Okay, cool. That's baseline. But I mean, 4-time Pro Bowler, all pro, played over 7,500 snaps. Like, as we've said before, this guy is legit. Why don't you take him? You've released Garrett Bradbury, who's now with the Patriots. We have Henry Bird at backup. Did some research on that guy. Fun fact, we actually share a lot of similarities. Henry Bird, also from Nashville, Tennessee, my home state. We played in similar high schools, played against each other. I didn't know a football team. That's okay. He also went to Princeton, Ivy guy. Love that. And fun fact about Henry Bird, your backup center, he tap danced in high school. That's a man who's secure in his masculinity. Let's go.
Okay, I did know that. You just went sort of 100 miles an hour there. Let me slow you down for a second.
I did.
So what you were asking was players who recently retired, just recently are out of the NFL, that if you could talk them back into it, connecting it to Darren Waller.
Yes.
So like he's a guy that recently retired. If you could talk them back into, hey, come out of retirement, just give us one more year, it'll be awesome. That you could add to the Vikings. So Frank Ragnow recently retired. Yes, if he could come back and play for the Vikings, it would be great. Technically, I think Michael Juergens is probably their backup center, but I'm glad you went down some sort of Henry Bird rabbit hole. And Lindsey Young, who works for the Vikings, did a story about him and his stage career. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
So now that we've gotten to that point, my answer was going to be, because I saw this guy is in the news recently for being old, Larry Fitzgerald. Larry Fitzgerald, I mean, I don't know if he ever announced his retirement. Clearly, he is retired from the NFL. And his son just committed to go to Notre Dame, which made me feel 1,000 years old, having seen Larry Fitzgerald's entire career going back to college. But I think if you were talking about one guy who could probably still run some routes and make some plays, get him to come out of retirement to play for his hometown team, He is from here. He's one of us. He was actually a ball boy during Randy Moss's time.
Wow.
If Larry was gonna, and there were a lot of people who thought someday Larry will be a Minnesota Viking. If you could talk him out of it, come be wide receiver 3, play with Justin Jefferson. I think he would. I think he would be still pretty darn effective, even if he's a little on the older side.
There's definitely something to be said for a hometown guy who has the attention and the respect and the love of the whole community. I feel like if you walk out on that field and you feel that, I can't imagine the rush that would be as a player to step on the field and be like, man, this city legit has my back. Like, this is crazy.
Honestly, I'm a little surprised that it never happened. It was talked about so many times of like, well, Larry, his contract is up. Like maybe he'll sign a 1-year deal. Jason Kelsey coming back for a year. That would be a good one. Although I think the Vikings are finally good at center. Peyton Manning is a backup quarterback is a good answer. Although based on the way Peyton threw it at the end of his career, I don't know about that. But who might be still pretty good? Or at least backup level is Phillip Rivers. Could probably his last year in the NFL was not bad at all. He could probably still be a backup if he wanted to be. There was talk that when Jimmy Garoppolo got hurt for the 49ers that they called Ben Roethlisberger and tried to talk him out of it. Like, can you come back just for like 1 year? Teddy Bridgewater came out of retirement last year to play a playoff game for the Lions.
I mean, Tom Brady did the same kind of, the guys can't get enough of it. I think that's probably a bigger note of when they unretire, of like realizing that they've hit their peak and it's a different life for them going forward that will not be the same.
One other name I would throw out there is if Everson Griffin could be a situational pass rusher, I would say him too. I know he's still in town, but Everson Griffin after he was with the Vikings, went to Dallas, Detroit, and then came back. And it still had a little juice to him, so he probably still does.
Okay. Won't lie to you, just had to look that guy up. But
that's understandable. There's a bunch of stories there as well that we'll leave for another time.
We'll save that for next week.
Story time. Yeah, we might have to get it.
The off season with Maggie. It's just campfire time with Matthew. Someone in the comments said it's Grandpa Matt spinning yarns to young Maggie, and I gotta say that sums up this episode.
It definitely does. Okay, before you get back to kids stuff like homework at Syracuse, there, what else you got? You got anything else?
Those are my main things, but I did run across one other story that said Sports Illustrated, one of the authors, thought Jared Goff has peaked. And I know this isn't Vikings related, but it's NFC North. I got to say, I don't think so. I got to really disagree with him there. But I do have a player who I do think has peaked. I'm going to hit you with a quarterback. Dak Prescott, man.
Oh.
9 years, and he has not actually been that much of a star. Can't win a playoff game. He's real inconsistent. His deep ball accuracy is not great. Sometimes he's just kind of heaving it out there. His accuracy rate dropped from, get this, 65% to 52% in 2022, 2024. Like, he just hasn't been that good. And he's signed to this big $240 million 4-year deal. I just struggled to see. I feel like he's hit the peak of his career and he's just gonna flatline and like be fine. But I don't see him coming back up and like clawing his way back to this momentous win season.
I think that is very possible that 2023 was really the opportunity for the Dallas Cowboys and for Dak Prescott, because they had the number 1 offense in the NFL that year. And Mike McCarthy had looked like he completely changed the Mike McCarthy narrative. They came out against the Packers, laid an egg from the very first drive and never recovered. And then last year they start 2-5 or something with Dak. Their defense gets hurt, and then he gets hurt for the rest of the year. He's had a lot of injuries too at this point.
I know.
He's had a lot of surgeries. My thing with Dak was, I think early in his career, I really thought that he was going to be kind of next level, but then he had, maybe it was an Achilles, and he never really wanted to run ever again. And he wanted to totally be a pocket quarterback. And there's just limitations if you're going to be a pocket quarterback. I've always thought, you heard me talking about the truth is in the middle with some players. I think it's probably with Dak, Like he's probably better than the playoff record, but he's
Sure.
also not. Some people act like Dak Prescott is just a genius and is an
Right.
incredible top quarterback. And I think he's kind of in that Kirk range, Kirk Cousins when
I was
Kirk is at his best of like 8 to
Yes.
12.
I was gonna say the same thing, and I think it's the Dallas shine that's rubbing off and the vibe that they put off as an organization and the way that they interact with the media of like, "No, we got this great guy. Like, let's polish him up and really make." It almost feels like it's being wow, sorry, this camera just zooming in on my hands. They're just hyping him up a little out of proportion in my opinion, but in correspondence with the media machine and the hype machine of the Cowboys.
Yeah, I think when it's sort of like depends on what week it is. Like if they have had a big win on national TV, then they're going to talk about Dak as if he's an elite quarterback.
Right.
And if they've had a loss, then they're going to talk about Dak as if he's just terrible and they need to get rid of him. But where he deserves credit is his negotiation with the Cowboys, where he took them to the cleaners. Of course, that's going to result in them struggling with their salary cap going forward, which again reminds us of the Kirk Cousins era with the Vikings, where they just couldn't get to the next level. I think Dusty's right. Now that they have George Pickens, he'll throw for 4,500 yards and be out in the first round. I've had a theory too about just pressure in general and how it can really collapse people, organizations, players, coaches. That Dallas thing is just a pressure cooker. And since Troy Aikman retired, it seems like everybody collapses underneath it. Tony Romo's entire career was Tony Romo's a choker. He's a choker. He can never get over the top. And then Dak Prescott has the same thing happen to him. It almost feels like that team has so much media on it all the time that and there's so much every year there's more and more of this. You'll never be the 90s Cowboys again. You'll never, and it just doesn't go away because that's where all their fans came from. And so all their fans are still around and
Yeah.
all their fans saw the heyday and they just expect the Cowboys to always be that. And it just builds on itself. And I don't know who could handle it, but
Yeah. I gotta say, I feel like the Cowboys fan base has not gained any new fans except for the ones who it's been passed down from generation to
yes.
generation with their dad's like, and here is your Cowboys jersey. Merry Christmas. This is now your team. I like my friends aren't like, oh man, let's go. Like Dallas Cowboy. No. It's just kind of a forgettable team in the actual football sense.
Right.
But
I mean, they've
in
had a few years where, and 2023 was one of them where they're a 12-5 team and they've got a chance. But you're right. As far as how often they deserve to be in the limelight versus how often they are in the limelight does not match up
does
at
not.
all over the last 20 years. And yeah, talk about generations. To me, that still makes sense because I'm like, well, Michael Irvin and Emmett Smith. But to anyone under the age of 30, it's probably like, why do they talk about the Cowboys
Right.
nonstop?
Like,
Because they have the biggest fan base, I think, in the entire NFL.
oh, they do, and I think I mentioned this previously, but when we were scheduling games, like, you take into account that Dallas and Kansas City are gonna draw eyeballs regardless of where you put them and regardless of who you play them against. So, if the networks want a big game, those are the teams that are in high demand of, like, "Yeah, I know it's the Cowboys, but, like, we're still gonna play them. We're still gonna have a blowout show at halftime and a pregame show," and, again, play into the spectacle of it because that's what gets eyeballs because that's what brings the money.
Right. Exactly. Okay. Well, this was a lot of fun, and I'm sure that there will be more stories that come along as we continue our conversations. But we are only a couple weeks out from actual training camp. Things will happen, storylines will come up. Maybe we'll even next week get into the NFL 100, which is counting down, and we'll see how many Vikings are on that list and so forth because it is indeed July. But we'll have a lot to talk about very soon, I think. And until then, we'll just sit around the campfire and do this. But Maggie, great job as always. And I will see you next Monday evening.
Sounds good. This was fun, y'all. Football.
All right. I didn't expect to tell all those stories, but that was a good time. Maggie Robinson, intern Maggie there at Syracuse. So Thursday night, by the way, folks, and there's a lot coming. This is on the podcast this week. There is Tape Guy Week. So I'm interviewing a bunch of X's and O's tape analysts, and that'll be really fun, diving into deep into the X's and O's of the Minnesota Vikings as we lead up to training camp. And then Thursday night, I'll do the rest of the most interesting lists, the second part or the last part of that, numbers 1 through 5. So I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. Thank you for the audience participation and maybe some stories that should be left untold. But thanks everybody. This was a really fun stream, and we will talk to you all again very soon. Football.